Society loves a simple story. If someone walks away from their family, people rush to label them cold, ungrateful, selfish, rebellious. Like they woke up one morning and decided to betray their own blood for no reason. But Carl Jung saw something completely different. In his clinical work, Jung didn't see the person who cut ties as broken. He often saw them as the only one who was awake inside a sleeping household. Not weak, not unstable, not heartless. Sometimes, the sanest person in the system. And today I want to show you why the so-called black sheep is often the symptom bearer for entire bloodlines. Why Jung believed that leaving can be the first real step toward becoming your true self. Because Jung spent decades studying what he called the family unconscious, and what he discovered is disturbing. But it explains everything. Families don't just share genetics. They share a collective shadow, a dark pool of denied truths that everyone silently agrees to ignore. Abuse gets reframed as discipline. Neglect becomes independence training. Narcissism gets excused as a strong personality. And the person who dares to name the pattern out loud becomes the problem. It's like an unspoken contract signed before you were born. Every family has rules about what can be acknowledged and what must remain hidden. These rules aren't written down. They're not discussed. They're transmitted through silent disapproval, through sudden subject changes, through that specific tension that floods the room when someone mentions the thing nobody talks about. And the family unconscious operates like a shared delusion. Maintaining it requires everyone's participation, which is why the moment one person stops playing along, the entire system reacts like it's under attack. That's where the truth teller enters the story. The person who eventually cuts ties is usually the one who noticed everything from the beginning. They saw the alcoholic parents' rage cycles. They felt emotional manipulation disguised as love. They recognized the golden child and scapegoat dynamics that everyone else acted like was normal. But here's what makes their position so dangerous. They didn't just notice these patterns. They absorbed them. They tried to fix them. They took responsibility for what was never theirs to carry. And Jung had a name for the kind of perception that often develops in these people. He called it differentiated perception. It means you can read emotional atmospheres. You sense the gap between what people say and what they mean. You feel the weight of unspoken resentment in the air. And let me say this clearly, that's not a superpower. It's a survival mechanism. It's what happens when you grow up in an environment where reading the room correctly is the difference between emotional safety and emotional punishment. Or sometimes even physical safety. So you learn to scan faces. You learn to measure tone. You learn when to disappear. You learn when to become useful. You learn when to speak and when silence is the only protection you have. And when you become that sensitive, when your nervous system becomes that trained, something strange happens. You become a mirror. You reflect back what no one wants to see, which is why in many families the truth teller becomes the target. Jung called these people the identified patient. The family points at them and says, "You're the one with problems. You're too sensitive. You're causing drama. You need therapy." And the tragic irony is this: they're often right about the therapy part, but completely wrong about the diagnosis. Because the person who leaves isn't sick. They're having a healthy response to a sick environment. They are the fever that signals infection, not the infection itself. But families don't want to hear that truth. Because admitting that the person who left was responding rationally would mean admitting something is deeply wrong with the family system. And most people would rather protect the system than confront reality. So instead they double down. They rewrite the story. They tell relatives about the ungrateful child who threw away everything. They bond over a shared victim narrative. They gather in their group comfort and say, "After all we did for them." And the person who escaped watches from a distance, finally able to breathe. Jung understood this dynamic through his concept of individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you actually are. Beneath the roles, beneath the masks, beneath the projections. And Jung's point was brutal. You cannot become your authentic self while playing a role assigned by someone else's unconscious needs. If your family cast you as the scapegoat, you spend your life absorbing blame that doesn't belong to you. If they made you the fixer, you exhaust yourself trying to heal wounds you didn't create. If they needed you to be the golden child, you suffocate under the pressure of their projected fantasies. Because they don't actually relate to you, they relate to the character they need you to play. So individuation requires separation, not always physical distance, but psychological distance. The ability to know where you end and they begin, to recognize which thoughts are yours and which ones are implanted voices from childhood, to distinguish between guilt that signals genuine wrongdoing and guilt that signals you're breaking free from an old script. And the moment you recognize these roles for what they are, something shifts. You start to see something painful. Your family doesn't actually know you. They know the version of you that kept the system stable. And once you see it clearly, you face an impossible choice. Do you keep performing in a play you never auditioned for? Or do you walk off stage and discover who you actually are? This brings us to the breaking point, because Jung observed that cutting off family is rarely impulsive. It's almost never one big explosion. It's death by 1,000 cuts, followed by one moment of perfect clarity. Someone asks you for the 100th time to ignore your reality and accept theirs. A parent demands you apologize for boundaries you set. A sibling expects you to pretend the abuse never happened. And suddenly you just know. Nothing will ever change. And that clarity feels different from anger. It's quieter, colder, more certain. You're not making an emotional decision. You're making a survival decision. You're choosing sanity over their comfort. You're choosing your future over their past. You're choosing yourself when they never chose you. But then comes the guilt, because society has powerful weapons to deploy against people who leave their families. They whisper about honoring your parents. They quote scripture about forgiveness. They repeat blood is thicker than water, conveniently forgetting that the full phrase is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning chosen bonds can be stronger than biological accidents. And the guilt operates on multiple levels. There's the surface guilt of disappointing people. Then there's the deeper guilt of breaking an invisible family rule that says loyalty means suffering in silence. And beneath that, there's the existential guilt of choosing yourself, of claiming your life matters as much as their comfort. And Jung had a radical response to that guilt. He believed your first duty is to your own soul, not to biological obligation. He watched patients destroy themselves trying to maintain relationships that were killing them from the inside. He saw brilliant, sensitive people reduce themselves to shells of who they could be, all to avoid disappointing parents who were never truly pleased anyway. And here's what Jung knew that most people don't understand. Staying in a toxic family system doesn't just hurt you. It perpetuates the dysfunction for the next generation. And that's where this gets even deeper. When you stay in a toxic family system, you don't just suffer quietly. You teach the system that it works. When you accept mistreatment, you teach the next generation that love includes abuse. When you ignore your own needs, you model self-betrayal. When you protect family secrets, you become part of the cover-up. This is why Jung believed that individuation is not selfish. It's ethical, because someone has to interrupt the pattern. Someone has to say, even if only through action, this ends with me. But theory is one thing, living it is something else entirely. Jung could map the dynamics from his clinic, but the real terrain of walking away reveals landscapes he could only observe from a distance. Because cutting off your family sounds extreme to people who have never lived inside a toxic system. From the outside, it looks cold, heartless, unthinkable. How could anyone walk away from the people who raised them? But here's what the world doesn't talk about. For some people, leaving their family is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of survival. From the time we are children, we are taught that family comes first. Family is forever. Blood is thicker than water. These messages are everywhere. Movies, music, religion, school, culture. We are told that no matter what happens, we should stay loyal. We should forgive. We should endure. But no one prepares you for the moment when staying starts to destroy you from the inside out. What happens when the people who were supposed to protect you become the ones who hurt you the most? That's where family estrangement begins. And it's a story millions of people are living right now. Quietly. Family estrangement is not just a fight that never got resolved. When someone cuts off their family, they are ending one of the most fundamental human bonds. They are walking away from holidays, birthdays, weddings, and funerals. They are accepting that there may be people they never see again. So why would anyone make that choice? Almost always, the answer comes down to one thing: pain. Deep, persistent pain that has built up over years, sometimes decades. Pain that reaches a point where staying connected means losing yourself completely. One of the most common roots is abuse, and abuse isn't always obvious. There is physical abuse, being hit, shoved, or hurt in ways that leave marks. But there is also emotional abuse, constant criticism, humiliation, or being made to feel fundamentally flawed. There is neglect, where your emotional or physical needs are ignored. And there is psychological abuse, manipulation, control, gaslighting, being made to doubt your own reality. When someone grows up in an abusive home, they don't grow up feeling safe. They grow up hypervigilant. They learn to walk on eggshells every day. They learn to read the mood of the room the second they walk in. They learn how to make themselves smaller, quieter, easier to tolerate. And over time, they learn a devastating truth. The people who were supposed to love them unconditionally are the ones causing the most harm. For most survivors, walking away is not a first choice. It's the last option. They try talking it out. They try explaining how they feel. They try setting boundaries. They try forgiving again and again. They hope that this time something will finally change. But eventually they face a painful reality. Some relationships cannot be fixed, no matter how much effort you put in. Some people will not change, no matter how many chances you give them. Another reason people cut off their families is constant unresolved conflict. Some families need one person to carry the tension. Maybe you were the one who asked too many questions. Maybe you were the sensitive one, the different one, the one who refused to pretend everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Over time, you learn something subtle but devastating. Your true self is not welcome, so you try to become someone else. You edit yourself. You soften your edges. You swallow your truth. And eventually you reach a breaking point. You realize you cannot keep abandoning yourself just to keep the peace. Then there are families where boundaries simply don't exist. Parents who go through your private things. Siblings who share your secrets. Relatives who feel entitled to judge every choice you make. In these families, privacy is treated as betrayal. Independence is seen as rejection. And if you grow up in that environment, you may not even realize how unhealthy it is until much later. Sometimes the awakening comes when you move away. Sometimes it comes when you experience a healthy relationship for the first time. Sometimes it comes through therapy, and suddenly you see it clearly. What you were taught to call love was actually control. What you were told was concern was actually intrusion. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This decision is rarely sudden. For most people, it's the result of years of thinking, grieving, and accepting. Eventually, there is a moment of clarity. You realize the cost of staying has become higher than the cost of leaving. Every interaction leaves you drained. Every visit reopens wounds. Every phone call pulls you backward. And that moment is often described as a kind of death, the death of a dream. The dream of having the family you always hoped for. The days after cutting off your family are emotionally confusing. There is often relief. The constant tension disappears. Your nervous system finally gets a break. You can breathe again. But there is also grief, a strange, heavy grief, because the people you are mourning are still alive. You grieve the mother you wished you had, the father who could have been kind, the family moments that will never happen. And then comes the loneliness. When you cut off your family, you often lose more than just those relationships. Extended family may take sides. Traditions disappear. Your sense of belonging fractures. The world can suddenly feel bigger and emptier, and the outside world rarely helps. When you tell someone you're not in contact with your family, you see the judgment flicker in their eyes. People who grew up in healthy homes often can't understand. They offer advice that feels like salt in a wound. You only get one mother. Family is family no matter what. They don't realize that what they're asking you to do is return to the place that broke you. The hardest moments often come during holidays and milestones. When everyone else is gathered, you might be alone. When you achieve something meaningful, there's a bittersweet ache knowing the people who should be there aren't. You carry an invisible empty chair with you. And yet, this is the part most people don't understand. Those who walk away are not asking for pity. They reached a point where they had to choose between their family and themselves. And after a lifetime of choosing others, they chose themselves. And that choice takes extraordinary strength. Choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else goes against almost everything we are taught about what it means to be a good person. It means facing the fear of being alone without the safety net that families are supposed to provide. It means stepping into uncertainty without applause, without validation, without anyone telling you that you did the right thing. And yet slowly something begins to change. At first, life feels quiet in a way that's unfamiliar. The chaos is gone. The constant emotional noise fades. You're no longer bracing yourself before every phone call or visit. Your body starts to relax in ways you didn't even realize it had forgotten how to do. Then comes the rebuilding. You start discovering who you actually are when you're not performing a role. You notice what you like, what you believe, what you value. You begin to trust your own judgment because no one is constantly undermining it anymore. And somewhere along the way, something unexpected happens. You start finding people who feel like home. This is what many people call chosen family. Chosen family is the quiet revolution that happens after estrangement. It's the realization that family is not defined by blood but by behavior, by consistency, by safety, by care. Chosen family can be friends, partners, mentors, or people who simply show up when it matters. People who listen without minimizing. People who respect your boundaries without taking them personally. People who celebrate your growth instead of feeling threatened by it. And the difference is profound. In chosen family, no one is obligated to stay. Everyone is there because they want to be. That alone changes everything. Love is no longer enforced by guilt. Loyalty is no longer measured by how much pain you can tolerate. Relationships are built on mutual respect instead of silent contracts. And for the first time, you get to decide what love looks like. You get to create traditions that nourish you. You get to set boundaries that protect you. You get to experience connection without fear. This kind of family grows slowly, organically, through authenticity. And Jung saw this pattern again and again in his work. The so-called black sheep, the one who left, often became the most psychologically healthy and grounded member of the family system. Not because they were better than anyone else, but because they broke the cycle. They stopped carrying the family shadow forward. They chose consciousness over comfort. This doesn't mean they stopped loving their family. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings about estrangement. Cutting off contact is not about hate. It's about self-preservation. It's about recognizing that you can wish someone well from a distance, while acknowledging that closeness is harmful. Love does not require you to remain in spaces that destroy you. Think of it like pruning a tree. A gardener cuts away dead or diseased branches not because they hate the tree, but because they want it to survive. Sometimes you have to prune the family tree to save your own roots. You remove the connections that are draining your life force so new growth can happen. Jung saw this as an act of courage, not cruelty. It takes far more strength to walk away from family than it does to stay and suffer. Staying is passive. Leaving is active. Staying is expected. Leaving is what your soul demands. The person who cuts off family contact isn't running away from love. They're running toward themselves. And the journey from estrangement to healing is not linear. There are days when you feel strong, clear, and free. There are days when grief hits you out of nowhere. There are moments of doubt, moments when you wonder if you overreacted, moments when old guilt tries to pull you back. But there are also moments of peace that make everything worth it. Moments when you realize the constant anxiety is gone. Moments when you laugh freely and catch yourself thinking, I haven't felt this light in years. Healing comes in waves, not in neat stages. You might be triggered by unexpected things. A stranger's voice that sounds like your mother. A holiday commercial. The smell of a meal from childhood. These moments don't mean you made the wrong choice. They mean you're human. You're processing a profound loss while also stepping into profound freedom. And here's the truth that slowly reveals itself. When you stop trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it, you become available to receive love from people who are. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you find people who understand you without explanation. When you stop shrinking to fit into a system that was always too small for you, you discover how expansive you actually are. The transformation doesn't happen overnight. Holidays may still feel strange. You may grieve the family you wish you had while accepting the family you actually got. This grief is necessary. You are mourning both the relationship you lost and the relationship you never had. But through this grief, something new emerges, a self that belongs to you, a life shaped by your values, not their expectations, relationships based on authenticity, not obligation. You become living proof that you can survive the thing you once believed would destroy you, the rejection, the anger, the disappointment. It doesn't break you, it frees you. Jung believed that the person who successfully individuates doesn't just save themselves, they become a quiet beacon for others trapped in unconscious family systems. Without preaching, without convincing, simply by existing, they show that escape is possible, that you can leave and not only survive but thrive, that the family curse stops with the person brave enough to break it. People who walk away from their families often develop a deep, grounded wisdom. They understand pain in a way most people never have to. They know the cost of self-betrayal. They learn how to set boundaries and protect their peace. They discover that real love never requires you to lose yourself. The decision to cut off your family is, at its core, an act of self-love and self-respect. It is saying your mental health matters. It is saying you deserve relationships that lift you up instead of tearing you down. It does not mean the choice is easy, but it does mean you gave yourself permission to live. To anyone who has made this choice or is standing at the edge of it, know this: you are not alone. You are not a bad person for protecting yourself. You did not fail your family by walking away. In many ways, your family failed you long before you ever left. And the fact that you had the courage to walk away says more about your strength than anything else ever could. If you are the one who left, understand this. You are not cold. You are not ungrateful. You are not broken. You are awake. You saw patterns others denied. You felt pain others minimized. You chose healing over pretending. You chose yourself when they chose comfort. Sometimes you have to prune the family tree to save the roots. Sometimes love looks like distance. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for your soul is to betray the role your family assigned you. Jung understood this, and now you do too. The goal is not to be alone forever. The goal is to be safe in your own life. The goal is to be whole, healthy, and free from the pain that was destroying you. And sometimes the only path to that peace is through the hardest goodbye you will ever say. Thank you for being here. If you're someone who broke the cycle, who chose sanity over family approval, who walked away to save yourself, this message was for you. Remember this always. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival, it is strength, and it is the beginning of a new chapter in your story.